The great thing about that now on the buy side is we get to control our commission. We're not at the mercy of whatever the seller has decided or whatever the listing agent has decided to offer. So we've had several instances where we've taken, 2.5% is a pretty average number in our area. So we've taken buyer representation agreements at 2.5%. The seller is offering 2%. We've either been able to negotiate that extra 0.5% into the agreement when we're writing the offer, or surprisingly enough, our buyers are saying, I understand that's what I agreed to pay you and that's what you're worth. We will cover the difference. We have not had to reduce commission. And then on the other side, on the listing side, now I have used the new EXP forms because I have listings that are going live after the date of the changes. So I've started having them sign it. You know what the beautiful thing is our sellers are used to getting the answer, what's your commission? 6%, 5%, 6%, whatever that number is. Well, now we can say 4%. Or whatever number I want to use. And they think, well, that's a great deal. That's less than what I thought it was going to be. And I've actually taken higher listing commissions because of it, because they're expecting to hear 6% is the commission. And I said, 4%. I'll take the listing at 4%. My average listing commission typically has been around 2.8%. So I took a listing at 4% and I said, oh, and let's have you prepared for the fact that a buyer's agent's going to come along and they're probably going to ask for their commission to be paid for out of your proceeds. We're going to negotiate that in the deal. And they said, okay, great. So we're actually going to price a little bit lower. And if the buyer's agent wants to get paid out of our proceeds, then we're going to raise the price a little bit and cover that just like we do with closing costs. So that's just my ramblings of my experiences. And it's a good thing. I think I'm going to be making more money between now and the end of the year per transaction because of it.
That's awesome. And I had wondered if the lower commission to the seller initially would encourage them to price better. And that seems to be true in your case. And I could see the psychology of why that would be that way. But I know you are excited to introduce your guest. So let's get on with it.
Yeah, definitely. I'll share one more example because I would encourage everyone to use this. I mean, I have a listing at $725,000, still a little bit overpriced, and I have not been able to get them to go to $699. That's the number that we need to be at to attract that new group of buyers. So when I said, hey, let's take the buyer's agent commission out of the net sheet, this is what that would look like for you. Let's price at $699. And if the buyer's agent wants to get paid out of your proceeds, we'll bump it back up to $725. And so now we get to bump our listings down in price a little bit to attract more buyers. So another tool that you can use. So I'm excited to introduce Shayna with Growth Word Consulting. And so I mentioned before, Shayna does business consulting, not just for real estate agents, but several other businesses, and also has a long history in the real estate industry, certified John Maxwell coach, and has been my personal coach in expansion and business growth and searching for new opportunities. So Shayna is going to talk to us about her experiences and things that she has been talking with other agents and brokerage owners across the country, and some best practices within our settlement. And I'm sure you've got some other great nuggets for us. So go ahead and take it away, Shayna.
Technology is just showing up in my world today. So thank you guys for your patience. As Stephanie said, I've been in real estate for well over 20 years. I've been a broker for 22 years. And I was doing some notes last weekend, and I've gotten myself in trouble in the last few weeks by going towards business practices, because although I am a broker, I'm not your broker. So I am going to try and stay away from business practices per se, although I'm happy to answer questions. And I really thought how I could provide the most value today is focusing on the mindset, like what's happening in the mindset around this. I coach, as Stephanie said, across the country. I'm in 7 different states. So I've been on countless, I finally stopped this week, but on countless broker calls and talking with agents. And then I did some deep diving into social media this week to see on all of the forums that we're all a part of, like, where are our questions? And the one thing I would say is get off those forums. Like, they are absolutely toxic. It's hard, like what people are coming up with and the conversations they're having. And it allowed me to really kind of dive in and go, here's what people are really thinking in our industry. And here's the biggest challenges that are causing people to be afraid and not move forward. And then the first one is about commission structure and how it's going to change their income, what's disclosed, what's negotiated, and thinking through that in my coaching around that, because that has been a big one. A lot of people are saying, what if, what if, what if? And the truth is, and I'd love Don and Stephanie's opinion on this, I think we've got 3 to 6 months before we know the what ifs. Like, we have a long time of although we've been preparing this for 4 months, we're really preparing for it now. And I think we've got a long time before we figure out which way the market's going to trend. And we know where we're at right now. And with several of my clients, we went through a lot of the what if scenarios. If this happens, if buyers agents start going directly to listing agents, if buyers start going direct to listing agents, then how do we change our business model? Like, have some plans in place, do some performance if it brings you comfort, and then let it go. Because we don't know what if's going to be some time. The other thing, and we hear it enough times, and it's worth saying again, the one thing that's going to insulate you from a downward pressure on commissions, even if it's just momentary, and I do think if there is one, it will be short-lived, is know your profit and know that your expenses are in line. If you've not done that, if that's not your normal practice, it's a good time. There's always a reason. This is the reason right now. Are you ready to cut expenses? If there's a downward pressure on commission for a short period of time, to stay in the game. That's my thought on that. Any other thoughts or questions around commission structure or?
Well, I would just add that when this occurred in the loan officer space following Dodd-Frank, it actually turned out to be a win for them.
Yeah.
And particularly the ones that could articulate their value proposition. They even made more money. As Stephanie was just sharing with us.
Yep. It's been a big plus for them. Yeah. So the next one is around client communication. And I've heard many people say, and my research showed, how am I going to communicate this change to my clients? And when I saw that word for probably the 10th time last weekend, I thought, do our clients even know that this is a change? The average buyer and seller transact business every 7 to 10 years. And we're concerned about a change that they don't even understand is a change. And it's kind of like if you go to a dentist and they switch fluoride between the time you were there last year and the time you're there this year. They're not spending 10 minutes telling you about the fluoride and why they switched it and what it is. They're asking you if you want fluoride. They're telling you why you would want fluoride. And then they're doing it or not and charging you or not. And so there's a lot of us that are wrapped up in communicating to clients with the changes. And some do know. 1 in 5 know. 1 in 5 have a question, but they know just a little bit to ask the question and then follow along with your value and your scripts. So understanding how you're going to communicate to somebody about it, understanding what your scripts are that you're going to own that are aligned with the path we're taking and what your brokers advise, but really getting hung up on how we're going to communicate change when 90% of our consumers don't know there is a change. It's no different. They don't remember.
Or my experience has been they know that there's something, but they don't know what it is or anything around that. So it's very easy to explain. When I'd say most of the appointments I've gone on have said, I've heard something in the news about a change in the industry or a change in your commission. And when I am comfortable explaining it, then they are comfortable with the answer. So if I'm like, oh goodness, the sky is falling and, every negative thing that everyone has ever said, and I just start regurgitating that on them, then they feel the insecurity. And my answer has just been, there are 2 changes. One change is we're not negotiating the buyer's agent commission for them up front when we take a listing. The buyer's agent will negotiate that directly with their buyer, and they could work it into the contract when they write you an offer. The other one is that any buyer that walks through your door other than an open house will need to have a signed representation agreement. And when I say those two things, they're like, oh, great. So I'm not committed to paying more money to a buyer's agent. But we have a conversation about the benefits of being willing to do that if they ask for that in the contract. And then also, you mean every person that walks through my door is going to be signed represented by an agent? I like that. I like that security. I like knowing that you're not just letting anybody through the door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And are you finding, Stephanie, that most of your sellers are still willing to, when you weigh the benefits, are they still willing to pay that commission and offer it up front as a part of their strategy?
So far with the listings we've taken, it's still been, same forms, same putting the commission in the MLS. And every time, even some of my harder ones, even the investors that are really watching every dollar that come in and they say that they're not going to, at the end of the day, they're like, yeah, I see why I would want to put that in there to attract a buyer. Now, the conversation has changed where we're saying we're not putting it in the MLS and we're not deciding on that amount at the time that we take the listing. But we do need to have in our minds that, if we're listing at 700 and a buyer's agent is asking for their commission to be paid through closing costs, does that mean we still sell at 700 or does that mean we need to bump the price up to 725? So I'm just having that conversation with them and knowing that with every offer we receive, I'm going to be providing a net sheet. So and that's my script every time is, you seller, you care about your net. What do you care about at the end of the day? How much money is deposited in your bank account by the time that this house sells? You don't care about what the list price is. You don't care about where any money goes as long as you get that number at the end.
Right. They really don't care who makes how much money. The other thing the other script I heard the other day that I really thought was great. There's so many out there and so many of them are so good. But one of them talked about every buyer that comes through the door has to have, hired some sort of representation, has had to agree to some sort of relationship with the buyer's agent. And the script was, you don't work for free and I don't work for free and they don't work for free. So however it shows up, there's likely going to be a commission involved in the transaction. And that's a good thing because your best protection is having a buyer that's well represented and, helping them see the value in that. And the biggest challenge for our buyers today in any market is affordability. And when we just continue to tack on more challenges to that affordability becomes a decision between which house they're going to purchase. So being open to that negotiation, ready for it, like being open, ready, and excited that that's happening is a good thing.
I like that. I like that script.
Yeah. The next one, the next biggest concern in our marketplace is competitiveness. And for sure, there's a big concern. Real quick, Jackie, you had a question. Let me answer that question and I'll jump back to this one.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I love, the lighthearted approach to it. I know in Colorado, a postcard has gone out. It landed in most homeowners' boxes on the 1st of August that said, it's the typical, hey, did you know, if you're a homeowner between these dates and these dates, you are entitled to some substantial compensation. And I do know that my conversation with my database, they are like, which postcard, right? It's kind of junk mail that just gets tossed. They're not really reading it. Mm-hmm. Yet I do think it is an important thing for us to be in front of it, because what I think is going to happen is that, I'm sure you guys have seen the Camp Lejeune. If you were in boot camp at Camp Lejeune, you drank that water, you are entitled to substantial. I mean, that even that one to that limited audience is just, it feels like it's all over the media. And so I do think that, this is open to all homeowners, which is a much wider audience. And I do think, the word's going to get out. And I do think we need to, with our clients, be ahead of this in our conversations. But I do appreciate the lightheartedness of it, because most homeowners, just a simple answer can get you in front of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. I like that. And Jackie, it's interesting you bring that up. I say, I do have some clients that are absolutely leading with that in the conversation. Like they are leading that's just their mindset. I want to get ahead of it. And so they've scripted around and they're leading their conversations with the settlement and how that's shown up in our industry. And I think whatever you say, the confidence in which you say something and communicate with your clients is almost as important, if not more important, than what you say. And that's part of the value proposition. The value proposition is your confidence in what you do and how you communicate and their trust in your skill. So I think if that's where you're comfortable and you're like, I want to get ahead of this rather than wait for the questions to come to me, then own that. I don't think that's a problem at all.
Well, and the way I'm kind of handling it is, you have every right to participate in the class action suit, of course. It's probably going to end up being a nice cup of coffee as far as, when this is divided up amongst millions and millions of people, enjoy that cup of coffee, and you have every right to do that, because it might be $20, $30, which is a good cup of coffee, right? Maybe 3 or 4 cups of coffee. But I still love the lighthearted approach for sure.
And we've seen it, we've seen it across all markets, people that are, jumping online and contacting their databases and trying to kind of get in the middle of that conversation to create, leads or some sort of database connection or information. And there's a lot of different ways to communicate and provide value to your database. And if that's where people want to go, I say that's great. There's nothing wrong with bringing the information to them. But I also think, again, it's no change to them. I mean, you're right. There is a settlement. You can put your name in the hat. You can get $20 and it's going to be awesome. But beyond that, I'm not, But I like your approach, getting ahead of the conversation, certainly being prepared for the conversation. And that kind of leads us to the next thing, which is market competitiveness. And this really is something I've heard. And in the very beginning, even something that Stephanie and I focused on a lot, like, what if this changes the face of business? And again, when we talk about back to the beginning, we don't know where it's going to go. We don't know. It's being aware, watching what's happening. But we've had discount brokers in our market for years and years and years. I'm sure they're in Oregon, they're in Arizona. There's discount brokers everywhere we go, and they've not taken over the market yet. So I don't know why they would now, but there could be a short period of time where we see that. And I've worked with on and off and know a gentleman in Vegas. He's a very big producer. He's doing around 400 to 500 transactions a year. And 4 months ago, he's in a coaching group with my partner. 5 months ago, he said, there's a lot of agents in our market that are not doing buyer agent side commissions. They're not even having the conversation. They're not negotiating it. And he's like, I'll die on that cross. I just believe in our industry and I'm not going to do that. And 3 months later, we saw him again and he was like, man, I was dying on that cross. And so he changed his business model, right? But his production never changed, right? He was continuing to serve, continuing to work with clients, work in his database. And when the market changed, he pivoted. He pivoted because he needs to stay in the business. And when the market changes again, he will pivot again. So it's I think those pieces of it are going to be very micro market centric. And seeing what's happening, studying what's happening, like don't jump quickly. But when there's a trend, being prepared. I don't see market competitiveness something that's going to truly change the face of our industry over this settlement and these form changes.
So would you say that we hear this all the time, being clear on your value proposition is really important, and having data to back that up? That's one thing that we're working on right now, is not just saying, I negotiate for you and I'll help you do this and I'll help you do that, but actually having data that shows in the last 12 months or in the last 24 months, I have negotiated this much off of prices. I have won this many times in competitive situations. I have negotiated this amount in repairs. So I've got an actual track record that shows the consumer cares about how does this affect me? What is this going to get me? So if I can show them, I can get you $20,000 in repairs, I can win you that multiple offer situation, that's our value. It's not just some Canva template that shows this is what an agent does. I open escrow.
Yeah. And we say, our value is communication and negotiation. And quite frankly, that's the expectation. Yet we've learned over the last several months that it's really hard to sit down and in any way communicate our value. Our value shows up mid-transaction on every deal. That's where our value shows up. So I love, Stephanie, that you went there because our value is negotiation, but having the data to back it up and what that means. And another really key point that I think people could focus on is, multiple offers you've won, list to sales price ratio, repairs for buyers. And then the other one that's being tracked now that I think is really important is transactions that fall apart mid-transaction. And two people track that. Your office may track that. EXP may track that on a national level, but the lender for sure tracks it. So if you call your lending partner and say, how many transactions have you guys had fall out of contract in the last 60 days, 90 days, and compare that to yours, that's a really key, that's another indicator of what negotiation means. That puts definition and meaning and validity behind negotiations. All of those things. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
When things get competitive, there has always been someone that is willing to work for less than you. I'm looking at the faces here and whoever is on the live stream and listening to this later. I know our group, there's always someone that's going to be willing to work for less than you, but you're still getting business every day, right? And that's not going to change. So we just keep that same mindset that we ask for the business. We know what it costs us to be in business. We know the value that gives our clients. And we set that number and we don't waver from it because someone will represent a buyer for 1%.
Right.
There always has been someone willing to do that. None of that has changed.
And we're still in business. And I think the other really to add on to that is being willing to walk away from a client. Like one of two things are going to happen. You're going to walk away from a very reduced commission that's going to take your time from earning higher commissions, or sometimes that take back, it's just psychology. That take back of, Stephanie, I really appreciate that's your model on what you're willing to pay. And I don't think that we're going to be able to win together based on that. Don.
Yeah, I want to run with that just a little bit because that's one of the things that I feel is so amazing about this particular change. And what I mean by that is that people are going to reveal themselves to you right away. Okay. And so if they don't value you and your services, you're going to know in that first meeting when you're presenting the equivalent. I think of this as listing buyers, and when I was actively selling, I loved being a listing agent. So now I'm listing buyers. If I were selling today, I would absolutely view this as an opportunity because one of the reasons why I chose not to work with buyers is, like Stephanie said earlier, I was burned a time or two. And as a driver personality, I do not like being taken for granted or taken advantage of. And so I would love this. And yes, there are going to be people that are not going to want to sign it or not be willing to pay for what I believe my value is. But at least I'm going to know that before I spend a bunch of time, money, and energy with them.
Yeah. Do you believe, Don, that that's a short period of time? And where I'm going with this is I do believe that within 6 months, as a general rule, our industry is not going to see a buyer listing any different than a seller listing. we're not even going to think that it's going to be the same mindset around, we would never list a house without a listing agreement. We would never think of meeting with the seller without, we just wouldn't. And I do think that the hardest thing for people to change is their habits as a species. We don't like to change habit. We are in the habit of not listing buyers. So this is change and it's hard. And I think that within 6 months, it's going to be like it was always this way.
Yeah. Well, I do think that the adjustment will be a little challenging for some, for sure. And in 6 months, some of those edges will probably be smoothed out. I'm sorry to say that I think there will be a general trending towards a lower commission for the industry at large. That being said, those people that have strong listing presentations like Stephanie are probably going to make more money.
Yeah. There are sellers who will pay for value. And when you know your value proposition, and I would say, I'm going to take that back and restate it to say that I believe that most sellers will pay for value if you know what their goal is. Like Stephanie said, you don't care what I make. You don't care what we listed for. You care what's going into your bank account.
Right.
And you care that it gets done in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle.
Right. But I think the thing you said a moment ago is most important to hang on to, is that this has now become another listing. So we're listing buyers, right? And who doesn't, by the way, who doesn't want more property listings right now?
Right.
I mean, okay, so I just feel like this is a fantastic way for us to encourage the bottom third of our industry to find another way to provide for themselves and their families, and raise the professionalism of our industry, stop providing free Uber service, and get on with business, at least for those of us that are going to have a strong value proposition.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Finally. The lost years are showing up. I call 21 to 23 the lost years of our industry. The next one, I have two more in here that I want to jump to. The next one is training, education, and broker support. And I am seeing this at a really high level in my coaching world. Not paid to say that I like what Leo is doing for EXP, I think is brilliant. And I'm loving every second of it. I texted Stephanie like the first day. I was like, this is brilliant. He's taking a stand, right? Whether you agree or disagree, he's taking a stand and he's giving directions to his agents that I'm not seeing any other broker do at any level. And that is, to me, right now, training, education, and broker support, and that confidence of here's how we're moving forward. Like, here is a direction in a change that doesn't have a lot of direction, is the number one most important thing. So I don't know that I really need to push into this with you guys, because that's the message you're getting and hearing through your leadership. I do think a lot of grace for those around you that don't have that. I do think it's a great opportunity to bring people into your world. Not that I'm not an EXP call, not a let's go bring people in, but right now, the general agent, the 2 to 10 transaction a year, 30 transaction a year agent that doesn't have the right support is very scared, and they're looking for a tribe. And I'm seeing a lot of movement because they don't know what to do. And there are no brokers or leadership that are truly taking a confident stand on here's what's happening and here's how we're moving forward.
I could speak. No, you go ahead. And then I want to make a point of what you just said.
Yeah. So again, I don't know that I need to push into that, except that understanding around you, there's going to be a lot of grace needed in our industry, and a beautiful opportunity to mentor, bring people into your world if necessary. Otherwise, maybe just mentor people into like, here's what we're learning, and here's what we're doing and why, because there are a few people that have the leadership and education and support that are needed right now. What were you going to say, Don?
Well, I don't know that it's even limited just to the agents doing 2 to 10 deals. Matthew introduced me to a rather, I would say, pretty sophisticated realtor in Palm Beach, Florida. And she without my urging, I did ask her where she was brokering her transactions right now. And she said, well, I'm at a little boutique, but I'm really thinking of making a change to a national company that has a luxury division. I feel like with this change and the NAR settlement and so forth, I need that support and structure for my value proposition. And this is an agent that historically has done 20 to 30 deals a year. And she is feeling insecurity. So
Right.
I was like, wow, okay. Matthew, you might want to call her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's real. It's real. People are very insecure. And I think the people that are most insecure are the people that don't have a strong leadership presence and strong broker support that's saying, go do this, and here's why. And giving them the tools and systems to do it so that they don't have to figure it out on their own. Because it's overwhelming. It's been overwhelming for all of us in leadership, and it's been overwhelming for us. So imagine what it's like for somebody who doesn't do this as their main focus in their day.
Well, even just keeping up with the changes with all the direction that we get. Courtney and I were on the phone right before we got on here. It's like, even just learning new forms, learning new scripts, that is a lot for us that just want to be out there grinding every day. And so thank goodness we have that top down, someone is just funneling direction right to us. So I feel like there is no excuse for any EXP agent to not be prepared at this point. But Heather, what do you have for us?
Yeah, good morning. I just have been furiously writing because you guys have said so many amazing things so far. But yeah, I have a team of about 17 agents. And I was just thinking, Ben Kinney years ago had said, being on a team, and his belief, I mean, obviously with his teams, it kind of makes sense in his worldview, but that being on a team for him is the future of real estate. And when you talked about, agents being insecure and having that concern and feeling that they don't have the support, when I think of the number of people that have come through my team that have been with brokerages for years, and they don't know even really, really basic things as soon as we, start on a transaction together. So I think that's just, I see it as a huge recruiting opportunity. Of course, that fits my worldview. But yeah, I mean, I think siloing a little bit or creating these, groups like the Atomic Habits, group that you guys have created, where we can come and get valuable information, I think is so key. And then I just wanted to mention a couple of thoughts I had on your prior discussion. I think Stephanie mentioned this as well. As soon as this change happened, I thought, wow, cool. We're no longer sort of bound by this, regular sort of average BAC that's offered. We get to go out there and set our rules, set our fee. If I'm unique and individual, why would I not have a unique and individual fee that is unique to me? And why would I not even maybe create a menu of services, or even take the circumstance of an individual buyer and maybe tailor something to them? So I think that opportunity to do that is huge. My agents, even as of 6 months ago, have been signing 3.5%, buyer agency contracts. I just basically told them, you decide what fee you want to choose, and you decide what you believe you're worth on a project by project basis, just like an attorney or anybody else would do. And you go out and decide. I will not tell you what to charge. And I will not allow price fixing in my own business, nothing. I won't give them direction on that. And so they've been out there securing 3% across the board, 3.5% if they've been able to do a little bit lower for some people if they felt that was something that made sense in the moment, or even tailor a menu. And then just being okay with the takeaway, you just mentioned a minute ago. You think in 6 months it'll be ubiquitous that we of course have a buyer's agency agreement before we go on, to the next, just like we do in listings. And in listings, kind of like something Stephanie said, we present our value proposition, we present it strongly. And one thing I've learned to do in sales is, if they're not willing to sign on that dotted line, I'm willing to say, no problem. when we do get that contract, then I'll release those like 8 things I just told you I can do, including all my contractors, right? And all the amazing things that they're like, can I get that phone number? Sorry, I don't send out that list until we're ready. But so that kind of a thing in the buyer's agency agreement is huge. And then the last thing is we get out there and set our own market. The more that we, get listings, the more we can help that seller to understand what may be advantageous in offering a BAC. And then if you have a team or even a group of people like us, we can see if those things are available and make it easier on those buyers that maybe don't have that money out of pocket. But that's all.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank you. Those are great takeaways, Heather.
Yeah, I just want to echo something that I heard Heather just say. And she likened it to the way that attorneys have been engaging with their clients. And that, for a certain demographic, may be a way of positioning this. And so, in other words, when a consumer says, well, what's the whole deal on that whole NAR settlement? And, are you guys, what's the thing on your commission? You say, oh, gosh, it's actually quite refreshing. As a matter of fact, I would say it raises the professionalism of our industry. In fact, we're now just disclosing the value and cost of our services, much like an attorney has done for decades.
Yeah, that's a great script. Is this recorded? That was an awesome script.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, well, Heather obviously gave me the idea, but I think that whenever you can associate our practice with a practice that might be perceived in a higher echelon of professionalism as a whole, it could elevate your influence. And so we can, not that I'm a fan of attorneys, by the way, but the consumer, I think, holds them in generally higher regard than realtors.
Than realtors do? Yeah.
We're both on the top 10 list of most hated professions.
Yeah. Well, we've got just a couple minutes. Did you have one last point that you wanted to make sure we talk about, Shayna?
Yeah, I'll wrap it up with a cute bow. And it really talked about the impact on our clients and how do we maintain trust with them as we're going through it. And I think the theme of the whole thing is it's time to focus. Like, what are your scripts and how do all the changes fit into your business practice? Whether it be like Heather's team, you set your fees, like what are your business practices? Get focused and create your scripts and validate your value proposition behind that. And then knowing the client's goals. And once you achieve their goals, they're fine. And there's going to be a lot of change. And I think the key to success in that is head down, eyes open. Nobody needs to pivot today. When you do need to pivot, be ready for the signs, but don't focus on it today. Today it's, do I know my scripts? Am I comfortable with how all of this fits into my business plan? And am I skilled at understanding what my clients need? Because if we can solve that for them, and if that's our focus, everything else is perfect. If we don't have buyers and sellers, the changes in the agreements don't matter.
Yep.
Amen.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Well, and I would imagine that there's plenty of people in this group that would love a script practice partner or role play partner. So reach out to somebody that you see on the screen or on the live stream or in our Facebook group, maybe even just post and say, hey, does anyone want to practice some scripts and role play? And that's the cool thing. We've got colleagues in lots of different markets. We're not shoulder to shoulder with our competitor. I can talk with someone else and what's working in your area and what's working in this area. And that's why I've liked my coaching time with Shayna too, because she gives me a perspective on the whole industry, not just what's happening here in my local market. So
yeah,
thank you.
I would also, I'll share really quickly, just so we'll all be like, oh, thank goodness. Arizona, I got their forms yesterday. Arizona released 152 new pages of forms.
All right. Well,
their MLS is to comply with the settlement. So we feel great. We feel good.
I am cool with the EXP listing agreement is shorter than my MLS listing agreement and much easier to read and explain. So I'll gladly use that.
Yeah. Awesome. My pleasure, guys. Anything I can do, Stephanie, always, you know that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
All right. Dawn, do we have any announcements or anything for next week?
No, who is up next week? I think Megan might have had to jump out into another appointment.
We'll look forward to an email letting us know what's coming next week.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll be here though.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Stephanie, thank you for bringing Jana. That was great. That was a great conversation. And I would imagine most people are feeling more confident in their ability to go forward, onward.
Yeah, that was the goal. Just go into these next few weeks and next few months with confidence. Yeah.
I think just ask yourself, and this doesn't hold just for this particular situation. Whenever you're faced with adversity, a change or something, there's a particular coach that I follow, and he says, what I ask my clients to do is say, okay, well, what good will come of this? And so no matter what that situation is, I want to encourage you guys to come up with 3 things from this change. What good will come from this? All right.
Awesome.
Make it happen.
Thank you.
If Tom Hayes were here, he'd want you out perspiring. And I think in most areas of the country, it's plenty hot to do that. So go make it happen.
Have a good one, everybody.